Well, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, thank you for joining me on Shifting Culture. Excited to have you.
Thank you, Josh. It's nice to be on your show. Thank you.
Yes, it's going to be good. So let's dive in. You have a new book, Help in a Hurry: Simple Tips for Finding Peace When You're Feeling Overwhelmed, Anxious, or Stressed. And I think we all need those tips at the moment. I think the world is feeling this way.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
thank you for this. You start your book out explaining a little bit about the mind and the brain and the body and how it intersects. And I think it's a good foundation for us to get started on these simple tips. So, can you explain some of the thoughts behind mind, body, and brain and how they interact together?
Absolutely, that's a really great place to start. So, there's people that I'm going to fuse a few props. So those that are
Okay.
just listening, what I'm doing is I'm holding up a brain and a skull. It's not a real one, and basically, we have been very misled in our current culture zeitgeist to think that the mind is the brain, but the mind isn't the brain. And so, one of the key things to understand is that your mind is separate from your brain. And in understanding that, it's very hopeful because it empowers us to know that, well, with my mind, I can change the brain. I'm not controlled by this physical thing inside of my head. So the research, and I've been in the field now for 40 years, the research shows, and this research shows for the last 40 years, but for years before this as well, we've always actually understood for thousands of years, we've spoken about the mind and the soul, mind and the soul and the body. We've always
Yeah.
made this separation. So it's quite a modern idea that the mind and the soul are one, or the mind and
Mm.
the brain are one. So I said mind and soul, I mean mind and brain. But it's a modern idea, and it's not actually correct science. So the first thing is to understand that your mind is 99% of who you are. Your mind has different levels. Your mind is all powerful. Your mind is the dominating force. Your mind is you. It's how you think, how you feel, how you choose, how you experience life, how you love, how you're understanding this conversation, how you make choices, good, bad, and ugly, the impact of that, how you show up in life, how you adjust that. So all of that is mind. Mind also drives our physiology. So the fact that your heart's beating right now, the fact that we make 800,000 to a million cells every second, the fact that your lungs are helping you breathe, the fact that your hormones are working, all of that is driven by your mind. When we die, the life force goes out of us, as we all know. Within 10 to 20 seconds of the heart stopping, the brain stops and the body starts disintegrating. So the thing that separates an alive person from a dead person is the mind. It's a life force. So it's a big word that incorporates all those psychological and neurophysiological elements. And that's good news because the mind is there for the thing that's doing the stuff that enables us to be a human, and the brain and body simply act hosts. So in this process, we as humans gather information from the outside with our mind. So mind is this filter. And what I always try and help people understand, just to get a visual, is if you just put your hands in kind of an arc around you, that is your energy field. And this is nothing weird or woo woo. Energy is the same thing that makes your cell phone work and enables us to talk over Zencaster like this. Energy is an electromagnetic force,
Mm.
and it radiates. And what we see from science is that as humans, we have our own energy force that is connected in to the world around us, and it comes from an original source, whether you believe that's God, godness, whatever one. So what we see from really hardcore science is it's this force that we pick up if you do an EKG on someone's heart, or if you do an EEG on their brain, or you have a sonogram. So anything where we are seeing a response in the body when a person's alive, that's been driven by mind.
Mm.
That's on the physiological level. Then the psychological level, how you show up, what you say, what you do in any one moment of the day, how you respond in your relationships at work, etc. That's all mind. That's basically the mind, how the mind is
Mm.
showing up in the moment. Okay, so now where does help in a hurry fit in and my work fit in? We know as humans, we think, feel, and choose. We have free will, we can choose. And sometimes we are very reactive and we don't always make the right choices. Every single experience we have, we react to, we respond to. We want to try and respond versus react. When we respond, we are going to be more organize and we're going to access wisdom and that kind of thing. If we react, we're going to bypass wisdom. So where does wisdom sit, this elusive wisdom concept? Wisdom is the core of the levels of mind. So mind is, as I've explained, this big part of us, and it's got different levels. The conscious mind is awake when you're awake, sleep when you're asleep, and obviously our conscious mind's operating now. But then we have another level that's the main level. It's called the non-conscious, NON. And that's our spiritual level. It's where our wisdom resides. It has an eternal component. It's beyond space and time. It's where every single memory we've ever had and will have is stored. It's on our side, finding stuff that's disruptive and making
Mm.
us consciously aware of it. So it's quite brilliant. It's our core. And what we want is to, in our life, as we go through our day-to-day moment of life, we want to always make sure we're accessing that wisdom. So we want to manage our mind, so that manage our conscious mind. So with our mind, we want to manage our conscious mind. We want to consciously manage our conscious mind, because the conscious mind is amazingly excitable. It's learning. It's like a toddler. It's up and down, and it needs guidance. So the toddler is learning in a really constructive way. But without a parent, the toddler could make a lot of mistakes and a lot of things could happen. Same thing with our conscious mind. It's this driving, think, feel, choose, up and down, beautiful thing, messy thing, but it needs guidance. So, what
Mm.
we as humans need to learn to, and this is really now we're getting to the core of Help in a Hurry, this new book, is we need to be self regulating moment by moment. So we need to catch that 63 seconds, the 60 seconds. It's a scientific, there's a body of research showing us that in the first 60 seconds, if we can regulate the 60 seconds, we become much more effective at managing our mind in the next 63, in the next hour, in the next day, and
Mm.
so on and so on. We also can train ourselves by managing the 63 seconds. We can upskill our ability to self regulate the patterns in our life. So maybe the bad habits that we've built, or the new habits that we do want to build, or the trauma that we haven't dealt with, or those kinds of things. And then we can actually capture those patterns and we can rewire those mind brain body networks, and that rewiring takes around 63 days. So
Mm.
I'm playing here with numbers, but there's
Yeah.
hardcore science that we see within a 60-second component. We can influence how the mind takes in the whatever's coming into the world and whatever thoughts are coming up, and we can control what that looks like in our mind brain body network. Why do we need to do that? Well, whatever wires in produces your behavior, so it's how you're going to show up. So important we regulate in advance. You can also use that this concept of 63 days is, once we have managed the moment, we see the patterns in our life that are disruptive, the bad habits and so on, the undealt with traumas, as I mentioned. Then we need to actually take the time to, over 63 days, to work daily for around 15 minutes to rewire those networks. Because you're
Mm.
not going to change something in your life unless you rewire the mind brain body connection, because it's the mind brain body connection that's very solid and made of energy and proteins and chemicals, and they don't go away one day or one
Mm.
minute. In 1 minute, you can start creating that awareness and capture the moment. But to change anything in your life, that requires that commitment. Now we know that life keeps happening, so you can't just do one 63-day neurocycle. It's called a neurocycle, what you do, and think you're okay. You can't just do one 63-second. It's a lifestyle. So I'm talking
Mm.
about helping people manage their mind in the moment, and then manage their mind, the patterns that are disruptive over time. Help in a Hurry specifically are 18 areas that we surveyed and from clinical research found that is what really worries people. Things like you mentioned, people feel burnt out, people feel exhausted, people feel, how do I deal with this anger that I'm experiencing, this reaction that I'm having to people, this regret cycle I'm being stuck in, these people pleasing moments, these triggers that are activating me. How do I capture those in the moment so I don't mess up
Mm.
my response in the moment and mess up the meeting, the conversation, the relationship? And then how can I stand back and say, okay, this is a pattern in my life. I'm going to commit to
Mm.
working on this over 63 days. So
Yeah.
that's what this book is. It's helping you in that gap. It's helping you in that moment.
Well, in that moment, it's really, really crucial, and it's extremely practical, and it's helpful. This book is fantastic, and it's
Thank
so.
you.
But So take me into something. So one of the tables that you talk through is you go from a mind hack and then it goes into a mind shift. If I'm taking Christian language, spiritual language, thinking about repentance, metanoia, which is change of mind, then that actually then moves into a change of direction and change of course, change of habit. This is a practical way of what repentance actually looks like, right? How you can change your mind. So take me into this table. What is this mind hack into the mind shift, and how do we start to rewire some of these connections?
Great question. Fantastic. And I'm so glad you brought up those terms. And I'll throw in another one. Besides the sort of repentance, metanoia, we are supposed to be capturing all thoughts,
Yes.
and we're supposed to be renewing our mind. So if you think of capturing all thoughts, whether you Christian, whatever you philosophy you believe in, as humans, to be a decent human, we need to self-regulate those moments that kind of answering the first question. So that's bringing all thoughts, not just the ones you feel like bringing into captivity, but all thoughts. And then renewing is a present continuous. We're supposed to be constantly renewing. So as humans, we're supposed to be living these lifestyles of being aware of what we're thinking, because not all thoughts have been created in the right, with the right sort of foundation. We've been reactive, or we've been angry, or we've been coming from a place of pain or whatever, and they feel real, but they're not necessarily real. So we've always got to be very aware of the thoughts and how they are driving our functioning, and then we've got to recognize the patterns and so on. So essentially, in this particular book, my other books, and my neurocycle app, neurocycle being the formula for how you do this,
Yes.
the broad formula. This book deals with the 63 seconds, the techniques that you've mentioned for the mind, like the mind hack and mind shift, and then the neurocycle app takes you through the 5 steps of the neurocycle over time. So in the moment, let's say now that someone says something to me in a meeting, and it's really makes you angry. You just think, like in your mind, you're going, what? How can you, like, really, and you just feel yourself losing it. You can feel your heart palpitating, because immediately your blood pressure will rise, because the minute that we get stimulated with something that's made us angry, we get a massive release of things like catecholamines, which can increase
Mm.
your blood pressure, which if you don't manage can become a problem, and all kinds of stuff. So in that moment, what can I do? So my mind hack portion is to say in 63 seconds, okay, in that 63 seconds or 60 seconds, I'm playing on the the number 63, but it's around 60 seconds, 63 because it takes 63 days to form a habit, 63 seconds to catch and before it becomes a problem. The first concept is not to deny or suppress or react, but to create a gap for yourself. The 63
Mm.
seconds is creating a gap, like on a traffic light. You've got the orange and the red before you go green. We want to buy that time. So the mind hack portion is, phew, I've been activated with anger. I'm going to do something like breathing. Now, when we breathe, we all know we need oxygen to live, but maybe you didn't realize that the energy of that angry comment that has come at you and your angry response, that is an energy, burst of energy. It's like an actual physical
Mm.
collation of electromagnetic energy that attaches itself to oxygen. So if you don't control that reaction, not only is it wiring in as an actual network made of proteins and chemicals and energy in your brain, but it's also hooking on the back of the oxygen you breathe in. So you've got a double whammy battering your brain and your body. And that just make you more mad and whatever. So what you can do is you think, okay, let me breathe just to get my physiology under control, but let me make sure as I breathe that I'm telling myself it's okay to be angry, okay to be okay. I'm dealing with this. It's not going to affect me. Some kind of hack of it's okay to feel like this, but I'm not going to let this control me.
Yes.
And you say that to yourself as you breathe in. And there's many different ways of breathing, but something like anger, I would use trigger breathing, which
Mm.
is where you take a deep breath. And then as you breathe in as much as you can, you take another extra sip. And you can even
Mm.
feel your head feels almost like it's pounding, but it calms down your neurophysiology. And as you're breathing, as you do that, it's almost like you could even close your eyes or look away. You do that
Mm.
breathing and you say to yourself, it's okay, it's okay. Yes, they've made you angry. And it's justifiable. You feel angry. It's okay. We're going to get this under control. So it's saying some kind of little statement along with the breathing. And that's a mind hack. You're
Mm.
using your cognitive skills to face your conscious mind, to face this issue, to repeat it back, to tell you it's okay, you're justified. or you're not justified, but it's okay. I recognize not who you are. It's that kind of thing, and the breathing. Now we go into, because that'll take you maybe 5 seconds. Honestly, once you know how to do this, you don't wait for a crisis to learn how to do these.
Yeah.
Read the book and practice them when you're in a good place. And so when you're in the crisis, you remember, okay, trigger breathing, it's okay to not be okay. And then you move into a mind shift. But just so in between the mind hack, which is this breathing and self talk, facing this issue, not denying it, you then just want to say to yourself a little bit of, you know what, they have made me angry. But I'm going to shift my mind. I'm going to do a mind shift. I am going to accept those words, but I'm not going to make them, I'm not going to let the anger be attached to them. I'm not going to let them make me upset, because where that's coming from, that's their opinion. It doesn't necessarily, I don't have to accept that. That could be coming from there. They could be sad. They could be upset about something. They also have an opinion. They're entitled to their opinion. So there's
Yes.
also this self-talk, but you're shifting your perspective. You're not saying, oh, this makes me so mad. How can they do that? You're not doing that because you're not going to get an answer to that. What you're saying is, okay, this does make me angry. Those words do upset me.
Mm,
But let me be curious and let me be compassionate. Mind shift is curiosity and compassion aligned. And when you
mm,
align curiosity and compassion, what you do is you create a protective barrier around you, which generates energy to them and calms them down. It calms you
mm,
down. And you say, okay, well, another perspective. And let me be curious. They could be completely wrong. And maybe they are, but maybe there's something I can learn from that. Maybe there's something in that data that could help me grow. So it's that kind of thinking, which can also take you, it takes me longer to explain it than once you understand what to
yeah.
do. So essentially, it is hack the physiology through the breathing and little self talk acknowledgement. So breathe and acknowledge. Then it is do this shift where you can shift the perspective, compassion and the
Mm,
curiosity aligned. Now, in the book, you mentioned a table. In the book, I've created tables for you that this is why I say don't wait for the moment to practice this. Work through the book and find the techniques that suit you. And these tables with QR codes that you can download, and you can work out the best, these kind of phrases in advance, and have a little toolbox, build a toolbox. So when you're in the moment, you can do that you can quickly move through the mind hack and the mind shift. And that's one. There's so many different techniques. I mean, there's another thing for anger in the moment, for example, is you can visualize these little techniques, like you could visualize that person shrinking, or you
mm,
could visualize if it's critical self-talk. A great way of dealing with critical self-talk, which can come from someone saying something angry to you, it can
yeah.
affect your self-confidence, and you can find yourself criticizing yourself, which means you've absorbed their anger and you've taken it
Mm,
personally, and you've turned it inward, and now you're criticizing yourself, and you've allowed, you could imagine that comment that triggered the self-talk, or triggered that as being like a little ant, tiny ant on a stage, and you're watching it. So then you create this distance. So these are sort of
mm,
psychological. It's like, think of the conscious mind being this toddler, and as a parent, you're saying, okay, well, let's look at this objectively. That's an ant. So honestly, this works
yeah.
so well. If someone really upsets you and you get critical talk going, just see your critical talk as an ant on a stage, and immediately
Mm.
you've distanced yourself. And then you're curious about, why are you saying this? And it's the same thing, that mind hack, mind shift concept. So there's just a couple of ideas.
That's really helpful when we're walking through those first 60 seconds to actually move us to a different mentality, to have this mind shift, and we can diffuse the situation. One of the chapters you talk through technology. So I want to go into the 63 days. Before, you've talked about like a 21-day detox. You're moving into now 63 days with your neurocycle app, and here in Help and Hurry you talk about 63 days of building a habit. What So how do we move into 63 days? The problem with me trying to build a new habit is that within those 9 weeks, I don't want to do this new habit anymore. I don't want to, this isn't what I want to be doing. So, what does it look like for me to stay the course so I can get to those 63 days?
Okay.
So, as you're talking about technology, maybe we talk about technology. So, if I wake up in the morning, the first thing I want to do is I want to just scroll on social media because my brain's not awake yet and I'm just waking up. But I don't want to do that. So I want to move into a new habit of maybe journaling or something where I could just not be on my phone.
Okay.
What does that look like?
Okay. So Two parts to your question, the 63 days and the 21 days. So let me clear that
Yeah.
up. It's always been 63 days, 3 cycles of 21. So what we
Very
find is that the 21-day idea came from a doctor in the 60s who was a plastic surgeon who found that his patients were healing from surgery in cycles of 63 days. Sorry, in cycles of 21 days. Stem
yeah.
cells work in cycles of 21 days.
Mm.
And so he then just wrote a book that became popular myth about, oh, well, that's how we change a habit, which is not actually accurate. We do a lot in 21 days. If you work daily and you follow a formula that helps your mind brain body connection work properly, which is what the neurocycle does. The neurocycle, just sort of side note here, the neurocycle, neuro as in brain, cycle, cycling through it, your mind cycling through your brain and body, is a formula based on 40 years of research and clinical application, showing how, based on the science of thought, how does a thought form in the mind brain body connection, and what are the steps involved. And it's 5 basic stages that your mind goes through, building, receiving information and building it into the brain. And then you can reverse engineer those 5 steps to rewire something. And so, for something to become part of the mind and body network, which means energy, proteins are made, chemicals, networks grow, that doesn't happen in 5 minutes, 4 days, 21 days. For it to be a stable network that drives how you show up as a human, in other words, not picking up your phone first thing in the morning and scrolling, and rather doing something constructive like maybe journaling your dream or whatever, or just even getting in a good mindset for the day or whatever it may be, that won't happen in 1 day, 21 days, or 63 days. The first 21 days, you're going to get really good at the process because in the first 21 days, there's a lot of breaking down and building up of a new way of thinking. So the breaking down,
Mm.
construction, reconstruction process happens there. So it takes about 15 minutes a day. The second 2 cycles of 21, which makes 42 days, in those 2 cycles, what you're doing is stabilizing the new network. So you build the new habit, but it's not a habit yet. You build the new pattern in days, but then you've got to grow it. So it's kind of like planting a seed. It's a seedling with tiny little leaves in 21 days, but for it to be a plant that can withstand, to grow into a nice big tree that provides shade and won't get knocked down with the first wind that comes, you have to keep watering it and it has to grow. And that's what you're essentially doing with the second 42 days. You're stabilizing it so that it moves into state in your, what we call the non-conscious mind that I mentioned earlier on. And when something is in the non-conscious mind, it's become wisdom. It's become wisdom that driving in a very intelligent way where you learn the way that whatever you're doing. So if the social media thing, that sounds like quite a simple thing to do, but why would I need 63 days to stop scrolling? Because you've created certain responses and that kind of thing. So you want to find something's interesting, and you may find the first couple of days, you need to find out what is that satisfying in the first place, that's scrolling. And you've got to find something that's an alternative that's more constructive. So there's a learning process going on. Once
Mm.
it's done, hit the 21 days and you do the other 42 days where you're stabilizing something, there's still a learning process going. And an easy way to explain this is actually with like driving, for example. When you learn to drive, you learn to drive, then you know how to drive. So there's a process of learning, and then it's become a habit. But a habit isn't this automatic thing that hasn't got intelligence, which is what people think it's become, that you're controlled by habits. Our habits drive us, but there is always a learning component. So even if it's the scrolling on social media, every time I do it each morning, I'm still learning. I'm learning how to do it even more badly, and I'm
Mm.
adding fuel to the fire. So there's a learning component in our habit formation. So like driving, if you get in the car, you've got a whole new experience each time you drive because there's new
Mm.
traffic and there's different whatever. So there's constant learning going on in our habit formation. So in the 42 days, we establish a baseline. And then after that, we keep on growing and we keep improving and so on and so on. So when we talk about driving without thinking, you're always thinking, but you're thinking you've got your baseline. So that's why we need 63 days to,
Great.
get yourself to floss, even floss every day.
Exactly.
That's very simple compared to dealing with a mental health issue.
Mhm.
So when you're dealing with like trying to change a trauma or trying to change a bad habit, getting irritated or angry all the time, that's going to be a little harder to do and is going to maybe require even multiple cycles of 63 days. Something like getting yourself to floss or go to the gym or something like that, which are more mechanical type things. It's still to get that into a really good habit, you're still going to need around 63 days, but you could spend maybe 3 minutes a day versus 15 if it's the more
Yeah.
complex one, if that makes sense.
Yes. In your book, you talk about stress, and you said it's a pressure that could cook a great meal or it could blow a lid, right? So we have different types of stress. So stress can be good. I want to know, like within a team, when we're talking about these mind hacks, going into mind shifts, and we have all these stresses and stressors within our work as a team, how have you organized, or how do we organize around some of these things so that we can not, if we do trigger each other, which we will in a team, we're going to trigger each other and we're going to have stresses and stressors. What does it look like to implement some of these things within a team setting to help us move forward?
Very good question. So stress is good for us until we don't manage it. Then it becomes bad for us. So stress keeps us alert. But when we start becoming reactive, like when we get irritated with that team member who said something or they didn't do something or they spoke with a certain tone that aggravated you, or you don't like how one team member wants to do something and you've got your own way, etc., that those kind of intolerances or things that create friction in a team are coming because each person isn't managing their own mind. So it does definitely start with a commitment of each team member to understand this concept that if I am triggered and angry, then let me do that little sip breathing mind hack, whatever. And then let's talk about this
Mm,
because this is a regular thing that's happening in our team. When this tone is used by this person, it tends to create this kind of reaction in that team member. It's not productive, etc., etc. So, so two parts. Number one is you have to educate. People need to understand the difference, the need to create that gap, the difference between reacting and responding, and find the technique that works for you individually so that when you are
mm,
triggered in the team meeting, each person is taking responsibility for themselves to manage their reaction. So if you know that your tone of voice tends to aggravate X person, then you speak about it, but you then have a way of when that someone says something and you want to irritatedly say, but I've already sent you that document, which that tone immediately will, some people can ignore, but someone else will be aggravated. If you had that discussion as you want to react like that, you can do a little sip breathing, do a little, maybe imagine the ant on the stage, or maybe imagine the tunnel, or whatever hack you've decided to use, and then get yourself under control so that when you do say, oh, I sent you that document, but is that confusing? In other words, you're going to mind shift, and the words that come out of your mouth are not going to be an irritated tone with a, I already sent you that document. It's going to be, okay, I have sent that document. Maybe it was confusing the way I sent it. Which is kinder and compassionate, and that immediately will generate the other person say, oh my gosh, goodness, sorry, you actually did send that document, but it's kind of confusing like that. Could we maybe look at another way of whatever? Versus, oh, I sent the document, oh, always getting irritated or just shutting down, and then the meeting loses wisdom. Because the
yeah,
minute that we are irritated with each other, we are not going to see the things we're supposed to see. So education, what is this thing? What actually happens? What is the energy I'm generating when I'm getting irritated in that team? What is that doing in terms of shifting positive stress to toxic stress? How is that causing pressure in that team meeting? Pressure is good. Like pressure and stress go hand in hand, as you actually already understood that very nicely. And a pressure cooker, which is the example I give, is a great way of cooking food, but it's got to be used in a certain way, or the pot will explode. And that's the same thing. We all need to be sharp and alert in our meetings. We need to be in good pressure and good stress. And to get into good pressure and good stress is to understand what pressure and stress are and what are the triggers in the team for each other, be honest and open, and then say, okay, well, I'm going to work on that. And then you find your technique, and each person finds their technique and they practice it. Does that make sense?
yep. That makes a lot of sense, and it's very helpful. All of this has been extremely helpful. This book is really helpful. If you could
Thank
talk to your
you.
readers, the people who pick up Help in a Hurry, what do you hope your readers would get from this? What is your hope for this book?
I love that question. I feel like this book is the missing link. And the missing link, because when you tell someone, and you actually already reacted to this in the way that I predicted, is you tell someone you want to change a habit and it's going to take 63 days. Their first reaction is, okay, 21 days was bad enough. Now you're telling me 63? I've had people asking me, isn't there a way of fast tracking this neuroplasticity? Because essentially what you are directing is neuroplasticity, which is the ability of the mind, us with our mind, to change the mind brain body network. And there isn't a way to fast track. But
Mm,
but if you manage the missing link, which is if you manage the 63 seconds, if you can manage that 60-second block and how you react,
mm,
suddenly your wisdom changes, your insight changes, you get access, you see things differently. It's unreal how these things work. You see things differently, and then suddenly, oh, okay, I see the reaction
mm,
that difference in my life, in other people's lives. And I can see that that's a pattern, and therefore I can see that it's worthwhile spending the time. Fortunately, you can't fast track a change of a network because of the fact that there's proteins involved and chemicals and energy, and
mhm,
there's a physics principle operating, and the physics principle is that we need that time. And as humans, we need that time to grow.
mm.
And we do live in a zeitgeist of make it fast, make it quick, biohacking movement. Those biohacks are fine for the end, that sort of end stage, but you still have to go through the work.
Mm, that's good. So go through the work. Don't stop, but actually go. And so, as Dr. Leaf says, 15 minutes a day that we could actually start to create these things and these habits. But we also need to create those 60 seconds, the mind shifts. It
Absolutely.
happened to me this morning as I was actually going through spiritual direction with my spiritual director, identifying lies in my life that I'm believing. One of the things that really helped was positive memory and going back into positive memories that actually counteract some of those lies that then have triggered me in my life and to move a different direction. So, positive memory, gratitude, things that you talk about, but we haven't.
Yes, I talk about, yeah, you're quite right. I'm so glad you brought that up. And well done for doing that. In here, I do have a whole section there because what our non conscious mind, which is that spiritual wisdom part of us, what it will do is not just look for the most disruptive thought and make you aware of those, to work in the moment, to catch them in the moment and start self regulating, and then in the long term, but it'll also capitalize on the good stuff, the good
Mm,
memories, because those activate our endless resilience. We don't run out of resilience. We get exhausted, then we think we're no longer resilient, or we think that we've got compassion overload or compassion fatigue and those kinds of things. What we have is we haven't spent enough time also looking at the good stuff, which doesn't mean that you're just going to take a positive thought and replace it with a negative. What
mm,
you want to do is draw from the energy. You want to face that negative in its face, because and be curious about whatever that toxic thing is, because it's data and you have to deconstruct and reconstruct. So you can't put a positive affirmation or a scripture on like a band-aid. You have to do the work, but to have the resilience to stick out the 63 days and the moment by moment stuff of the day-to-day life, of which you'll see in my book as well. I talk about it's okay to not be okay. 95% of our day, we're not all smiley happy. We're just getting through the day.
yeah.
So in order to have the resilience to get through the day, you also want to definitely focus on those prompts that come up, that are
Mm,
you deliberately and intentionally thought, hey, that really happy moment with your family member, or that great inspirational discussion that you had with a team member. You want to also not just let them through your mind. You want to catch them in that 60 seconds and look at them and say, how did they make me feel, my body feel? And, spend that time. And what you do, you add more energy to that. You make it stronger. Then that network activates in the mind brain body network. And then it literally opens the door and adds more resilience to your toolbox.
yes, perfect. Well, Dr. Leaf, thank you for this conversation. This was fantastic. I think very helpful. Really want people to go out and get help in a hurry. It's going to be available anywhere you get books. So go and you can get that. Is there anywhere else you'd like to point people to?
Well, I think what's really helpful is the Neurocycle app, which is available on iTunes and the Google Store, and also there's a web version. And for your listeners, if they want to get the Neurocycle app, they just have to they go to the web version and put in caps welcome. They can get 30% off a year's subscription. And that's the Neurocycle app. And so that's a great toolbox. If you've got this book and the Neurocycle app, I mean, I've got lots of other books too. You can get whatever, there's a whole book just explaining the neurocycle in depth, which is the system, the formula for what you do each day and what you do in that moment. But the neurocycle app, it's like literally me giving you therapy, holding your hand through those 63 days, doing the 5 steps daily. So then the combination of that plus this, I think, is a great combination to help you learn to self-regulate. And that really shifts the game, puts you into a state of mind management, truly capturing thoughts and renewing the mind.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It was a fantastic conversation. Really, really enjoyed it. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I love the questions. Thank you.